And we are live. Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to She Built It Boss Lady Chronicles. I'm Rita Gaskins Tillett. I am your host. And this is the show where we feature the extraordinary stories of everyday women who have owned their power to change their lives. And so I am super excited about introducing tonight's guest to you guys. I'm just going to give a couple minutes for folks to come on in. And while we wait, I just want to remind you that registration is still open for A Weekend for Me, the premier wellness experience for professional women, taking place in Jamaica, June 20th to the 24th. It is going to be absolutely amazing. We have rented a luxury villa that is fully staffed, with a staff that's waiting to cater to our every need. So you get to be queen of your life for 4 glorious days in Jamaica. And in addition to that, we as a group will do some deep work. And the theme that has been given to me for this particular event is self-love and self-worth. So, because that's one area where we as women have a tendency to, and probably just human beings, probably not just women, have a tendency to, fall short a little bit. So I'm looking forward to pouring into you, to helping you build your self worth and your self love so that you are ready to rock your life. So tonight's guest is Emily Vermeer, and I'm actually going to let her introduce herself because I want to know what things she wants us to know about her.
I
So
love
welcome,
that so
Emily.
much. Thank you so much, Rita. I appreciate you and just the opportunity and the women that are in this group. My name is Emily Vermeer. I love to be called Em. So if we meet, feel free to just say, "Hey, Em." But I am a woman after God's own heart. I'm a child of God, ready to go, and I'm a wife and a mom of two, a 6 and a 7-year-old that they're a year and 5 days apart.
Oh, wow.
So God has a sense of humor and we persevered. So um but I also run a women's organization called Fueled by Faith, which is an organization that helps Christian female leaders stay and live a life that's fueled by faith so we can run off the one true source and overflow instead of being siphoned out by the world. And that's basically my big thing right now. We have a local chapter here where I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we're actually branching out and building chapters all across the nation. So later this year, we have a chapter launching in Colorado Springs. We have one in Raleigh, North Carolina, and soon to be Arizona, and then Florida. And so God's really moving and bringing chapters so we can come together in community based off of the one true source. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I also speak and I'm writing a book at the same time. So I'm multi-passionate. I have many ideas, and my husband tries to like hold me back a little bit because I got so many. But I just love encouraging people and just encouraging other women to go after what's on their heart using the
Yeah.
skill set that they've been given to take that and really go light our world through that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background because you were not always an entrepreneur, correct?
No.
Okay. How did you end up in this entrepreneurship journey or on this journey?
I love that question so much because I feel like was I was very like sheltered that I didn't realize that entrepreneurship was really a thing until probably when I was 30. And then I was like, oh, people own their own businesses? Like it was just like new news to me. I
Yes.
didn't realize. I mean, it's very naive. Like I would see so many lawn trucks going by that that had different
Yes.
men's name on it, but I never realized that someone was doing their own business through that. I grew up very societal of go to college, get a big girl job,
Yes.
get the house, then meet the man, get the house, have the baby. And so I was very like, check, check, check,
Yes.
check.
Going down the list.
Going down the list. And then I remember, honestly, I remember getting my 3-year like end of year review where they like go through and, oh, you're doing a good job, to get
So
your.
so hold on, Em. What kind of work were you doing?
Oh, I was a recreational therapist. So
Okay.
I worked with kids and adults with special needs.
Okay.
So that's my background. That's what I went to school for in recreational therapy. It was more a clinical sense, but I loved working with people with special needs. And I my last job was working with Special Olympics in North Carolina, in the county that I lived in, and absolutely loved the job. It was when I was having my end of year review that the supervisor director was going through everything, and he was like, so you're doing great. It's your third year. You've really learned the ropes in 3 years. So now all you got to do is just coast for the next 30 years.
Oh,
And you
wow.
just do the same thing. And I literally, Sharita, I wanted to throw up. I was
I
like,
bet.
what? I have to, you just expect
Wow.
me to just show up and do the same thing, which sometimes that's for some people, and
Right.
that's
Right.
security, and they want to just be able to come and do. But for me, I could not picture myself doing the same exact thing for
Right.
30 years.
Right.
And I really felt capped. I really felt limited. And I
Yeah.
really felt like my giftings were being put in a box, and really not like seen and not even
Right.
allowed for me to discover those. And so,
Yeah.
really, COVID was a blessing, and it got me out of my position. And I couldn't do my job. So I was kind of available to the
Yeah.
county to just do whatever was needed. And it got me in a car about 10 hours a day listening to podcasts, driving around
Ah.
delivering items to people.
Yes.
And girl, I was listening to podcasts. I was listening to so many podcasts, and I was like, oh, your girl's gonna be doing something. I
Yes.
gotta be doing something,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so that just ignited me to start answering like this deeper call of like, there's something more than what
Yes.
I'm doing.
Absolutely. I love all of that. My coach actually calls it car university. So she
Oh,
talks about that, she's like, all these people who don't participate in personal development that say they don't have time and all of that. She's if you have a commute, then you have car university. There
amen.
are
I
a
love that.
million, literal million podcasts, and
Yes.
so many that are very, very valuable. So I
Yes.
absolutely positively love that. And I can't imagine how you must have felt when he said you can just coast for the next 30 years. It's like, wait a minute, this is all you think there is to
Yeah.
me? So, I mean, he
Yes.
wasn't even suggesting that you go higher in the company.
No. Yeah.
You talk about having low expectations. Wow.
Yes.
Well, I applaud you for wanting more for your life and actually going for it. So tell us, what did that going for it look like?
So looking back, it was little stepping stones and following
Yeah.
little nuggets, right? To be like, oh, and
Because you
it's
didn't have
probably,
a plan, right?
I
You didn't
didn't
have
have
like that
no
plan. You were
plan.
just going, yeah, yeah. So yeah.
Literally fueled by faith. Like literally, I was like, okay, God, next. You know those memes that you see that's like my plan and it's linear, and then
Yeah.
God's plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the next step. It was just following. Okay, and a lot of it relied on my awareness of my skill set, my awareness of, oh my gosh, I'm really good at this, or getting outward, just affirming me of like, oh, what do you see in me? What do you see me doing? What
Mhm.
skill sets? Because sometimes we're so close to ourselves
Yes.
that we don't even see our talents and our treasures, as something that we can monetize
Right.
off of or build. I had no idea about the coaching industry until I was trying to build a network marketing business while working full time and being a mom. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket. I'm going to hire an Instagram coach, and she's going to teach me how to do everything on Instagram. And she ended up becoming and evolving in our coaching into a life coach instead of an Instagram
Oh,
coach.
wow.
didn't teach me a lick of Instagram, but she taught me how to go inward and discover things about myself.
Yes.
Of She asked me a very critical question of, what am I tolerating? And that
Mm,
question
that's
became,
huge.
yeah, it became this catalyst of like, oh my gosh, I'm actually tolerating the exact life that I am not wanting to live.
Yes.
Like, I am actively pushing away what I desire because I am choosing to stay here. And
Yeah.
so that became this catalyst of like, okay, we're going to start doing different things. And through trying to build a network marketing business and getting life coaching from my Instagram coach, she helped pull out of me what I really wanted to do. And she was like, you really want to help people. You don't really want to sell shakes to people. And I was
Right.
like, okay, so what does this look like? And so
Yes.
I started back end work, building a business. I got really good at building landing pages and
Hmm.
building email sequences to where all the girls in my mastermind, they didn't have the time or didn't care to learn how to do it. So they were like, hey, I'll pay you to do that. I
Okay.
had no idea what a virtual assistant was, and I just became one overnight by YouTube and doing it. And
Yes.
so my coach then hired me to become her executive assistant. And that snowballed into me becoming an executive assistant, then evolving into owning my own virtual assisting agency and teaching people how to be a virtual assistant. And so I just kept, like I was telling you before, these like
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have never guessed that I would be a tech savvy person and trying to do all the back end work for business and then teaching people how to do the same. But it was just this crumb that would fall. And I was just eager for more. And so
Yes.
I would just pick it up and say, okay, how do we do this? How do we do that? Um, and then as I grew, my faith started to grow. And then
Yes.
my relationship with him started to grow. And then he started like pulling me in of like, okay, let's talk about community. And I started to pivot more as I grew into that. But it was this like movement
Yes.
all the way through.
Right. But I also, I like that you point out that you had to change and develop. As much as things were changing on the outside, it sounds like you were changing on the inside as well. And,
Yes.
I think that's a step that sometimes gets missed or that people don't realize. They think that, okay, I've made this decision to change my life. And so I'm just going to do something different and, it's going to be great. And, doing something different is great, but it takes a lot of inner work not to get pulled back to the person that you were and the life that you were leading.
Yeah.
And, to recognize that you were leading the life that you didn't want to be in, that
Yeah.
you were making a choice to stay in the box.
Yes.
That's really, insightful.
Yes. It was such a big aha moment for me. I grew up 5 mile radius of my family, and I we came back when we had our kids, and we were 5 mile radius of our kids, and it was toxic.
Yeah.
And it was really hurting me, my marriage, my family, like my core four. And
Yes.
when she asked me that question, what are you tolerating? It just opened up this can of worms, really, for
Yeah.
me to go inward to be like, oh my gosh, I'm actually being everything to everyone and nothing to myself,
Wow. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And when I realized that, it became this wow, like, I have so much more now to offer because I have shed and also taken off other people's responsibilities as my own and seen
Yeah.
my family as, your granddad is a grown man and your mom is a grown woman, and all these people in your like, they don't need you, and their growth is not up to me.
Right. Right.
Right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that's a big, like, I can feel like an onion, like, falling
Yes.
off of me, all of these things, and it just helped so much with my growth, and then that became a ripple effect for the people around me, even
Yes.
my family now, with me moving away and now starting my own business and doing things, it has helped them grow and see
Right.
what it's like for them
Right.
to set boundaries, right? And so sometimes it
Exactly.
just takes us to take that leap for
Right.
people to be like, what can happen if I do that?
Right. Yeah, somebody has to be first. That's
Yeah.
that's the first thing. Somebody has to be first, and then it's really helpful to have an example. And that's actually one of the reasons that I do this show, so that I can show other women that it's possible, that you can
Yes.
be, living an everyday life and
Yes.
then have an epiphany and completely change course and, and find your true north, so to speak.
Yes. That's so good.
So, how did you get to where we are now? Because we're still not there yet in the story.
Yeah. So it it took a lot of these moments, right?
No, hold on. Actually, I have another question. So,
Yeah, go.
are you still doing the virtual assistant business?
So we are not doing our
Okay.
virtual assisting business anymore. We have closed the doors to that. And that's also been a shedding of
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever read the book of The Big Leap. They talk about your zones.
Yeah.
And we witnessed that we were in our zone of excellence when it came
Mm,
to virtual assistants.
okay.
And um, we were burning ourselves out. And God was also calling me to start serving in a different area. And it was taking me away from that.
Okay.
And um, I was like, okay, God, like, what do you want? What are we supposed to do? Because that's paying the bills and this is not.
Right.
So, honestly, how are we going to do this?
Mhm.
And it was a year and a half of toe in the water faith.
Okay.
Of I would be in it, I would be in Fuel by Faith, we would do it, but I wasn't all there. Not all of me was there
So,
and
what did
committed.
Fuel by Faith look like in those days?
So those days, it actually was called something completely else. It was called the
Okay.
Carolina Collective. And
Okay.
I was getting businesswomen together that were Christian, but it was more business oriented. So
Okay.
we had speakers that would come on and pour and give tips for their business. But we would pray and we would, ask for prayer requests. So there's a little bit of Jesus in there, but it
Yeah.
wasn't all of him. And we built that, and it was about 6 months in, and no one was showing up. No
Mm.
one was showing up to the calls, even though they were committed, paying dues. No one was coming. And I sat with the Lord and I was like, what's going on? Like, I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
understand. And I had actually booked a event space for our conference and I couldn't get out of it. They wouldn't let
Yeah.
me out of it. And I just lost it. I was like, man, I thought I was doing this for the Lord, right? And I was being
Yes.
obedient, but my heart wasn't right. My posture wasn't correct. I was doing it for really to fund me and what I was
Yes.
doing. So my heart wasn't in the right posture. And so a friend told me, she was like, your conference, it should really be called Fueled by Faith because that's how you live your life. That as long as I known you, you've just taken these leaps of faith that I was like, wow. My first thought, I'm not even kidding, was that would make a cute logo on Canva with
Right,
our
because that's
right.
that's the VA background.
That's my VA background. I was ready to whip it up. We have a gas gauge with a cross and it's all the way to full.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, we can do that. And I was locked in for that contract for our first conference and I was telling everybody about it, but I didn't even know what was going to occur. I wasn't even in like I'm
Yeah.
selling this thing, but no one's buying tickets because I'm not connected with the true purpose of what was actually going to
Right.
happen and
Yeah.
occur. And I lost it one night, completely fell to the floor in my office. And I was like, God, I can't do it. And I honestly feel like he was like, great, now it's my turn.
Yes.
And he literally gave me a word of like, if until you can live fueled by faith, it will not be what I have called it to
Mm.
be.
Okay.
And I literally was not. It was a gut check to me to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not trusting God with
Yeah.
what he told me to do. And so I was like, okay, God, let's do this together. Surrendered it over. And we had 25 women show up. to our first conference.
Okay.
And that was the kind of the birthing of Fueled by Faith and where it was going. And it was during a hurricane. Hurricane
Oh,
came
wow.
on Friday, and
Great.
we had to pivot and change. But it was beautiful because I got to develop as a leader right in front of the women that came and paid money to come
Yes.
see and shift and change. And I honestly thought that it was going to be a one and done thing. And after that conference, all the women were like, okay, what's next? When's the next one? Can we do this monthly? And I was like, absolutely not. We cannot have a conference every month.
Right.
Um, but it just got my wheels turning. And so I was like, tell me what you guys would want. I'm going to take it to the Lord and we're going to figure it out. So 3 months later, we birthed the podcast. And then we started monthly meetups within our community here in Wilmington. And slowly we've been just getting, what do you guys want? How can we help you develop as leaders of Christian leaders in your areas? What is siphoning you out, and
Mm,
how can we help you continuously be filled?
okay.
And that community has built, we have 25 active members here. And then we have women that are coming in virtually from different states that come and join us weekly and monthly for our book club, that are really wanting to take the same thing and duplicate it where they're at.
Yes.
And so that's where we're moving now. But it's been this constant, like, I've done events before, but running a conference is completely different than
Yes.
a small retreat, a birthday party, a wedding, like all of these different
Right.
things.
Right.
It takes different skill sets and even learning how to budget it. And so it's just been this growth progress process, and also
Yes.
being able to plug into my networks and my community to see how other people can help me, so then I can go out and do the same for others.
Yes. So what does Fueled by Faith the conference look like now? So you said it
So
started with the 25 women. So what does it look
yeah,
like today?
this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So started with 25 women. Last year we quadrupled and we had over 100 come.
Okay.
And what was so beautiful is we always have it last weekend in September. um, August, so 6 weeks before, I went through a major life bomb in my life. Like, took me out, couldn't show up. I call those like traumatic things that happen, right? Life bombs.
Yeah.
And I could not show up. I could not go. I took my kids to school, at camp, but I just couldn't show up.
Mhm.
And God was like, I got you, girl. I got you.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, I think we had maybe like 45. We weren't quite halfway sold out. And I didn't market a thing until like for the rest of the time. And he filled that room with the rest of the tickets to be sold,
Okay.
and also came alongside other women. So I thought that was so neat that it
Yes.
quadrupled in a year. And even I could take 3 weeks off to not do
Right.
anything so I could take the time to heal, because it was necessary for me to show up as who I'm
Yes.
called to be for the women that
Yes.
were coming to that conference. Because if I just muscled through it, I wouldn't have experienced the healing that was required for me and my family of what we were going through,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is this a one-day event or
It's a weekend, so it's a
okay.
Friday night and a Saturday. We have a slumber party theme on Friday night. We all get in our
Okay.
PJs and worship. It's the funniest thing ever. People are like, "I've never worshiped in my PJs." I'm like, "Well, tonight is the night." So we have a Friday night slumber party and just fun and connection and community and worship and prayer. And then Saturday is full of speakers. This year we are shifting it up, and we usually have a full day on Saturday. But we are going to do like a 9 to 1, and then we're going to have an established herd gala dinner, formal
Oh,
dinner. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit because I we talked about the personal development piece. I guess one question is, what do you do right now for your personal development? Because in my experience, it's an ongoing process. You never
Yes.
get there. You keep going. And then also, what do you do for your self care? How do you refuel yourself so that you are able to pour into others?
So good. And these are integral questions. And I'm so glad that people asked me, because at first, like, I didn't have anything that I would
Yeah.
do. Right.
Yeah.
And so to start, um, is great. And I always have a coach or some sort of mentor in my life,
Yes.
depending on the area of growth that I'm working on. So I used to, like, when I first started my business, everyone was like, you need this coach and this coach and this coach. And I was like, oh, I just need
Right.
one person at a time, right? And so I just, at the beginning of the year, I really focus on where do I want to grow? That's who I'm going to hire, or that's what
Mhm.
I'm going to be a part of. Right now, I'm a part of a mastermind because community and networking was
Yes.
big for me for this year, since we're growing and I'm going to states I've never been in before. So I'm like, can someone hook me up with someone in Colorado? I've never been there
Yes.
before, and so that was important for my growth this year, to go and get plugged in with a network of women that are also like-minded, growing in their own areas, but wanting to give, to pour into me, but also to receive,
Yeah.
right, from me, because we all have gifts and talents, and I want to be able to give just as much as I receive.
Mhm.
And then, what was your other question?
What do you do for your
Oh,
self-care?
self-care. So some things, two things I'm going to say. One thing is, each month I take a night to myself. So
Oh,
either,
that's huge.
yes, I either go out and go get a hotel, or I go to our guest bedroom and I check in for the night.
Wow.
So I can get a night to myself to
Yes.
decompress, to
Yes.
sleep, because your girl needs some sleep,
Yes.
and to really just focus on me for a little bit and to come
Yeah.
down. I am sensory overloaded, and
Uh-huh.
so taking my phone out of the way, my phone doesn't even come into our bedroom. It's a no phone zone. And so just taking those little steps. So that's one major thing that I do. But I think what's really important is, how can we infuse this daily? How can we
Yes.
infuse taking care of ourselves daily? And what's important to me is making sure I get a little bit of me time every day.
So how do you
Um,
do that? Because you have 2 small children. So I know
yeah,
inquiring minds want to know. They're like, "Wait a minute,
yes.
she owns a
How does
business,
she do
she
it?
has a husband, and she has 2 little kids." Do tell
Yes. So
about this me time.
yes, if it's important to you, you will make it happen. That is what I have to say. So being really intentional, and then communicating it with your spouse or partner. If you have, I have the privilege of having my husband. And so I'm able to be like, out, I'm out for 10 minutes. Or when my kids are at school, now they're in school, praise God. So I drop them off at school, and then I make sure that I have it in my calendar, 10, at least 10 minutes, so I can go. And usually it's different for me because I get very like rigid and
Mhm,
stuff, so then I
mhm.
lose
Okay,
sight of it. And so this week it's taking a daily walk.
okay.
It's nice weather, so I go for a daily walk. I do a worship walk, and I go around my neighborhood, and that just like brings me
Yes.
down, and it resets me. Sometimes it's taking a bubble bath. Sometimes it's having I love planning sessions. So, like, getting a post it note and getting my
Yes.
brain on paper, that's self care to me, because it gets it out of here and then it
Yes.
gets it on something so I can get out of my brain. But I make sure that this happens daily, even on the weekends. I feel like we give ourselves breaks sometimes, or we don't think that's necessary, but it is necessary. And then I also make sure that I do the same for my husband, because I know it's
Mhm.
important for him too. And
Right.
so we
Right.
communicate like, hey, I'm out for 10 minutes, or he loves to play instruments, playing the piano, playing the guitar. So we like make sure we have shifts to do it.
Yes.
Our kids are also 5, 6, and 7, so we communicate that with them too. And my daughter will even tell me, "Mom, I need some me time." I'm like, "Girl, you go get yourself some me time."
I love it. I love it, training up the next generation because,
Yes.
I don't know what your life was like, but I didn't see a lot of that
No.
in the women, the women that were in my life, of them taking me time. time for themselves and time
Yes.
to recharge and all of that. So, you're definitely speaking my language. And when you talked about once a month having a night to yourself, I absolutely positively love it. Because, my retreat is called A Weekend for Me.
Hmm.
That's the name of it, and that's actually what it is. It's an opportunity for women to have me time, time
Yes.
that's just about them so that they can check in with themselves and, you know, see where they are. Am
Yeah.
I happy with life as it is, or do I want something else? And if I
Yes.
want something else, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be?
Yes.
Because I think sometimes we just keep going and going and going. And and if you keep doing that, you'll luck up and 2 years have passed and
Yes.
nothing's changed. If we're not intentional about the way that we spend our time, then life will just keep going.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, it'll just be life by default.
Yeah.
It's not what you chose. Like you're not choosing, or you are choosing. You're
Yes.
choosing, you're choosing this thing that's not the thing.
Yes.
The thing
Correct.
that you don't want. And I guess for me, what's really important is to live the life that I was created to live,
Amen. Yes.
because I believe that each of us was created, on purpose with a purpose. And I
Yes.
want to live out that purpose. So,
Yes.
and I can't do that if I'm just going from thing to thing to thing and not taking any time to, connect with myself and connect with God. And you talked about community. That was the other thing that
Yeah.
I think is huge. Um,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about how community has played a role in your evolution.
What's so beautiful, taking a look back on my life, community was actually a big part of my childhood with our church.
Mm.
While I didn't, I say I grew up in the church, but I didn't grow up in the
Ah,
church.
okay.
Um, it was very, very rural and regimented, but community was there. My father passed when I was 15, and he was sick when I was 5, and up until he passed
Yeah.
on. And it was community was an integral part for my mom to be able to take care of us, for my grandparents to get breaks from helping my dad. Like I remember my dad being sick, and our entire church walking up our driveway with candles in their hands
Oh,
and
wow.
coming to pray and sing over him. And that's a part that was instilled in me of, you don't have to be related to
Mhm.
people to have
Right.
people in your life,
Yes.
um, and that are here for you. And that was deeply rooted in me. To when we moved here 3 years ago, everyone was like, "Why are you moving to Wilmington? You don't know anyone there." I was like, "That's exactly why we're moving to Wilmington."
Uh-huh.
And now, 3 years later, I have like 20 million people in my phone as contacts, but a lot of them are like solid people that I know if I needed something, or if they needed something, that they would be there for
Yeah.
me, be the hands and feet. That's what we are called to do. And ultimately, and it's been an integral part from my growing up to now, because we're living in times where community is kind of sparse,
It is.
and we're like, some of our neighbors won't even come out of their houses to be in
Right.
community. It's been
Right.
so normalized to be reclusive and away from people.
Yeah.
But we know that that's isolation, and we know that the enemy,
Right.
that's where he likes to
Right.
go, and your
Yes.
girl's not going to be there. And so that's why I think it's so important, for us to be plugged into a community, but to be a part of it, not to just be there, but to be so plugged in and so involved, um, to use our giftings. Like that's another thing that we're here to
Right.
do, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your gift is not for you. All right. Right.
Yeah,
Right. Your gift was
right.
never for you. I
No.
always tell people you were created because the world needed an M,
Yeah.
and the gifts that M had. Because if you didn't have
Yes.
gifts to share, you wouldn't even be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. Do you feel like your community? I know in my life, my community is huge,
Yeah.
in terms of pushing me forward and
Yes.
inspiring me Do you find that that's the same for you?
Yes. Um, Something that I love is that I have women around me that love me and are
Hmm.
gentle with me, but will call me forward in a hot second. And I need that. We all need that of
Yeah, that accountability.
that accountability, but also for people to see us as God does,
Hmm.
because sometimes we lose sight of that. We
Yes.
lose sight of the power that's within us. We lose sight of our giftings that's within us. And we need a sister or a brother to come along and be like, you are, and
Yes.
remind us and say, just like what you just spoke, it's so important to have that person to hold your hand, but
Yes.
that person to push you forward. Because if it's up to us, sometimes we'll sit down,
Yes.
right?
Yes. We will.
Or sit back down. But you need that community, those people to pull you out of the chair, especially in times of need, because it, God didn't say that just because you follow me, it's going to be easy. He actually
Oh no.
promised trials and
Right.
tribulations, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
that's
He said
why
when
he,
the trials come. Like he didn't say if they
yes,
come. He said when they
exactly.
come.
When they come. And in Ecclesiastes, it mentions community of when one falls, the
Yes.
others there, right? And so that's the power that we have to be brothers and sisters around us. And that's why I'm just obsessed with it, of like, let's go, let's build, let's come together, and let's be in the source, be with the one
Yeah.
true, you know.
So, what do you see 5 years from now? Because I know 5 years ago you couldn't see any of this.
Yeah, girl.
So, so 5 years from now, what do you see in as far as Fueled by Faith is concerned?
That's a beautiful question. I don't necessarily know if this is 5 years or what his plan specifically could be in this timeline, but I have seen um, and do believe in his continued growth of Fueled by Faith chapters being all across the country, and us coming together at our conference as like a celebration.
Hmm.
All of us coming together with a huge conference space holding thousands of people for his kingdom and his glory, in community with one another, where women can come and men can come and be empowered and equipped and encouraged to go out and lead in the area that they've been called
Yes.
to do. And so, even like for churches to come and to be poured into their leadership, because they need it too.
Right.
Our leaders pour and pour, and this is
Right. And
this
they
is
don't.
a
Right. They don't refill. They
they
already
don't
know.
they don't
I don't
they
know. I don't
don't
know if I shared, and I guess I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I don't know if I shared that my husband is a pastor, so I know
Yes,
that
girl,
they don't refuel.
they don't refill. I went to a conference 2 weeks ago, and it was all for pastors. I just happened to be there for the team of my church, and they were like, how many of these have you been to come and get refilled?" And all of them were first timers,
Yeah.
every single one. And I was like, well, thank God they're here to
Right.
get refueled
Yeah.
and connected. But it's important. But leaders think about other people, they don't
Right.
think about themselves
Right.
and the
But
importance.
you're a much better leader if you are
Yes.
filled. I mean,
Yes.
that's the thing. I mean, we do this as parents, we sacrifice, as friends, we sacrifice. I know in medicine, we
Yes.
sacrifice. I mean, that's kind of
Yes.
what we were trained to do. But at the end of the day, you can't be as effective at the job if you are depleted. We all,
Correct.
I mean, at the end, we're all human beings. We all
Yes.
have a limit and a capacity. And
Yes.
nobody's superhuman. You have to refuel.
Yes. I have this beautiful, saw this reel that was done and I recreated it. And it was a vision of cups, or it was a showing of cups, right? And we always say, go and refill your cup. You can't
Yes.
pour from an empty cup, right?
Yeah.
And so this lady was filling these cups with her cup, right? So she had a full cup on
Mm-hmm.
Monday, and she
Yeah.
pours into her family cup. She pours into her work cup. She pours into her community cup. And she's left by like Tuesday with hardly any water in her cup.
Yes.
And so then I was like, oh my gosh, it's a restructuring of how we line up our cups. So if
Yeah.
you put cups together around and then you stack your cup on top, and then you're getting filled by the Holy
Yes.
Spirit and the Lord,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's overflowing
Right.
out,
Exactly.
it then
Exactly.
overflows into theirs, and
Yes.
it's overflowing into their cups and into the people that they're
Right.
surrounded with and going. And so that's the whole purpose of being fueled by faith and being fueled by the Lord, in the importance of what it is to pour into ourselves, because we are created. He didn't say, I brought you to this world to siphon you out for you to be
Nope.
weary and
Mm-mm.
dreaded
Nope.
and to be
Right.
depleted. No, he actually gave his son up for
Yeah.
that so we can
Yeah.
live fully and
Yeah.
abundantly. And if whoever's watching this, if you feel opposite of that, of feeling um like siphoned, if you're feeling more siphoned than overflowing, my sister, it is time for you to do some self-care, for
Yeah.
you to get poured into, and to learn how to do it more consistently so you are overflowing,
Yes.
because that is what makes the difference. That's what makes your light shine. You know, those people that you see on social media or even out in public that you're like, oh my gosh, like what is different?
Yes.
Why is their life so different? Why do they seem happy all the time? I had one lady at church, she was like, Emily, you are just so joyful all the time. And I was like, yeah, because the Lord lives in me and he overflows out of me all the time, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so it's this consistency of more than Sunday and more than Monday, of what can we do to do this on a daily basis. And so that 10 minutes a day that you can get away from your family and check in with yourself or whatever it may be,
Right.
just I want to encourage whoever's listening to go and change something to get into the state of overflow.
Yeah, and I also think it's in those spaces, in those spaces of overflow, that we can begin to discern our purpose. Because
Yes,
again, if you're just, on the treadmill of life, you don't have time to think about whether or not this is the thing that you're supposed to be doing, or this is the thing.
totally.
You don't even say, does this feel good? Like you just,
Right.
this is what I'm doing. This is what I have to do. This is my life. I made my bed hard. I'm going to lay in it. But you
Yes.
don't, right?
Right.
It's always a choice. We always
Yes.
have a choice.
Yes. We always do. Yep.
So I've loved this conversation. Every time I talk with you, I
I
get
know, girl.
we have great conversations, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. So let's see if there is one piece of advice that you could give a woman who, um, you already talked about the filling of the cup. I guess if you're giving a piece of advice to a woman who's trying to find her purpose,
Mhm.
what would your one piece of advice be?
Hmm. Thinking about it. So I would really encourage them to give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to get excited. What does it look like to get excited? What makes you excited?
Yeah.
What fills you up? Like just journal it out or brain dump it out is what I like. I don't journal sentences. I just write words down. But like we all at one point in our lives had a vision or something that excited us.
Yeah.
And so what would it be like to get back in touch with her, of like what used to excite you? Like I remember going and speaking for the very first time and I left and I was like, "Man, that was awesome."
Yes.
You know? And so I lost sight of that because I went back to what I was hired to do.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But when I look back on what excited me and made me feel like I what had a purpose. And so I would just make space to get honest with yourself of like what does bring me joy?
Yeah.
What does bring me joy? Because you can and you will go and discover that again. But
Yes.
first you have to be aware of what it is
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
go and do. And so I think as you get back into that excitement, it'll come at your purpose.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I usually in the retreats, what I tell them is, or what I ask them is, think about what makes your heart sing. Like, what
Yes.
could you do all day and like
Yes.
not get tired just because you love it so much?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you again. Tell us if we're interested in following you, if we're interested in working with you, if we want to come to
Yes.
Fuel by Faith. How do we do
Yes.
those things? Where do we
Yes.
find you?
You can find me. I'm primarily on Instagram. So you can find me at Emily underscore Vermeer, or we have Fuel by Faith underscore um, on Instagram, or you can find us on our website at fuelbyfaith.org. You can get all the details. We're announcing conference details later in the month. So as you start to follow us, you can start getting all the details and buy your ticket later this month as it becomes available. But yeah, that's where you can find me and get all the good details of what's coming up.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, Em, for joining me tonight. And thank you all for watching. I will put all of M's contact information in the comments. If you have questions, I forgot to say that at the beginning. If you have questions, put them in the comments and I will get them to her. I promise. And then just, let us know where you're watching us from, especially those watching the
Yes.
replay. Let us know where you're watching from. Put your questions in. So that's it for again. We'll see you all next week. Again, don't forget, registration is still open for a weekend for me, Jamaica, June 20th to the 24th. You can register www.aweekendforme.com. Take care. Have a great night.